Great. I think I will go ahead and share my screen. I'm Jan Joanitas with Renewing the Countryside, and I'm going to be your host or MC for this session. And let me just see if I can do this magic. Well, I'm going to try that again because that didn't look like what you wanted to see. All right. All right, can you see the slideshow now? Everyone? Okay,
yes.
Great. Well, welcome to this Minnesota Eqip High Tunnel for Beginning Farmers session. We are here because one, there's obviously lots of interest in this topic, and also about a year and a half ago, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which you'll learn more about today if you don't already know them, asked for organizations to come forward who could help connect them to historically underserved farmers. And we'll go over that really quickly, what those words mean, because I didn't know exactly what they were talking about when we first saw this. And so Renewing the Countryside, which is an organization that's based in Minnesota and works mostly in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa to help really leverage and support farmers and other food and rural entrepreneurs who are trying to renew their part of the countryside, was interested in this. And we were talking with our friends at Sustainable Farming Association, who also were interested in seeing if we could help do this, because we know the difficulties that people have with connecting with some of these federal agencies. And so we actually put in a proposal, and we're granted this contract to do this for 2 years to really see if we could kind of make a difference. And so that's kind of what is behind this. And so I quickly want to introduce Lucinda Winter and have her introduce herself and the Sustainable Farming Association, who's been such a great partner on this. And I will stop sharing, Lucinda, so that we can see.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jan. Hi, I'm Lucinda Winter. I'm the Executive Director at Sustainable Farming Association. I have been since last fall. And one of the things that has stood out, we are a membership organization. We have currently about 1,300 members, the majority of whom are farmers, but we also have members who are food advocates and chefs and members of the sustainable farming and ag community on the education side, academic side, and other NGOs and nonprofits with whom we work. And one of those relationships that that I have come to really appreciate is the one we have with Renewing the Countryside. We can just get more done and do more outreach when we're working together. And that's, I've really come to appreciate that very quickly. So that's us. That's sustainable, and we are working. So we cover the Minnesota waterfront for this program. And we have a number of connectors, some of whom are on the call, and they are people that will have been trained to help you connect with NRCS and have a successful relationship with them, can smooth out any bumps in the road you may have in that relationship, and really can become friends and mentors in terms of getting you where you want to go on your farm.
Thanks, Lucinda. So I'm going to share my screen again. It seems like to do that every time I do it. I have to thank you all for your patience. Right. Slideshow. Okay, great. So I'm just going to talk to you for just a couple of minutes here, and then we'll move it on to the more exciting parts of the program. So there are a number of different people who are going to be presenting, and rather than introduce them all now, I'm going to introduce them as we go along. I will say that we have Chris Hogue from the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which we will during this session say NRCS because it's faster. And I don't know if Lisa Byer is with us, but Lisa has been our key partner at NRCS at the state office, who's helped with this program and helped us connect to folks like Christopher. And so just real briefly, if you aren't familiar with NRCS, as you know, the federal government has a bunch of different agencies to carry out some of the work that they do. And the Natural Resource Conservation Service is really focused on working on private lands, and think of that as the opposite of public lands. So public lands are things like parks and national forests and things like that. So private lands are lands that are owned by private landowners, like individuals like farmers or forest owners. And they're really looking to protect soil, water, and natural resources. Now, they have this great mission to deliver conservation solutions to agricultural producers so they can produce natural resources and feed a growing world. Their vision is a world of clean and abundant water, healthy soil, resilient landscapes, and thriving agricultural communities through voluntary conservation. So a lovely vision there. This is where we come in. So or we are a part of this bigger vision, is that, as I mentioned, the NRCS was looking for really assistance to help reach the people that they normally don't reach. I think in a number of federal agencies especially that have been working with agricultural producers, there's kind of been a stereotypical sort of producer that they have worked with over the years. And a lot of times, especially in places like Minnesota, it's a lot of the the larger commodity farms, or in some cases, just larger tracts of land. And as newer farmers have come into the system, they haven't always known about these services that are available. So again, Renewing the Countryside and Sustainable Farming Association partnered up. And what we realized was needed were folks really who could be what we're calling conservation connectors, who could serve to connect those people who aren't familiar with NRCS with NRCS. And the people who weren't connected most fit under this historically underserved farmers definition, which I'll just go over quickly on a further slide. But the idea is that by tying all of these together, we can all work together to kind of improve conservation on all farms, as well as have more viable farm businesses of all types. So historically underserved farmers, interestingly, within the federal government, there are different definitions depending on what agency you ask. So they have varying definitions, but within the Natural Resource Conservation Service, this is the definition. So these are beginning farmers and ranchers, and that's those that have not farmed or have farmed for 10 years or less. Limited resource farmers, which there's a definition there, and it has to do with household income. And then socially disadvantaged farmers, which are, as you can see here, American Indians and Alaska Natives, Asians, Black and African Americans, Native Hawaiians or other Pacific Islanders, and Hispanics, and then also veterans. So our role really was to work with this set of historically underserved farmers rather than working with all farmers for this work. So I want to introduce you to the conservation connectors. And once I'm done with the slideshow, I'm hoping that they can wave or somehow make attention, because I know we have a number of them on. What we did was we knew that this was an important work to be done, but we also knew that it would get done best if we connected and had kind of the folks that were working on the ground with other farmers, be farmers themselves, and have connections into their communities to these historically underserved farmers. So we've pulled together this really great group of folks. All of them farm or have farmed, and most of them work for other organizations too. So they're not just part of this project, but they are for instance, Kazua is with Big River Farms, and Zhang is with The Good Acre, and Jared was with the Sustainable Farming Association, and Moses is with Kalimo, Minnesota, and Kathy is with the Minnesota Farmers and Market Association. So you kind of get the idea there. And really what we asked them to do was to provide customized, individualized support to farmers like those of you on this call and others who were interested in learning more about what NRCS was about, what sorts of resources and services they might have that would be of interest to farmers. And as part of that, they had to do some training. Some of them had worked with NRCS themselves, but others of them were fairly new themselves. And so they've all gone through training with various folks within NRCS and various folks who have used these services to understand how to help farmers navigate. So then I've got a couple more slides. This is the last one I'm going to show, and I can bring other ones back if it's useful. But so one reality is that NRCS does have funds that they use to get out to farmers to help farmers put in place different practices that lead to conservation. And we're talking today about high tunnels, which seems to be particularly of interest to beginning farmers. And those come under the Eqip program, which is this highest little plant over here. And you can see that in 2020, NRCS did 611 contracts. That sort of translates to almost that many farmers, although some farmers might have multiple contracts. And the amount of money they obligated in those contracts was over $27 million. So there are resources there, and that's why I think we're interested in talking more about it to you all, and why you probably are interested in this too. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if we have navigators on here, if you can wave. I don't know if you wave, if you then get shown. Look, do you see there? I see Moses is waving. Are there others there that are waving? Great. So with that, I am going to take us to our next session, and this is or our next piece, and this is going to be just a short little connected project, which Sarah George is going to talk about. And Sarah, I'll just turn it over to you.
That sounds fantastic, Jan. Thank you so much for that. And you guys, just briefly, I want to talk to you about another program that Renewing the Countryside is working on in conjunction with NRCS. And this is, we're working with the Michael Fields Agricultural Institute on this one. So we're doing FSA, which is the Farm Service Agency side of things. And in this one, we're increasing participation in FSA programs with socially disadvantaged farmers in both Minnesota and in Wisconsin. Actually, when you're working with government agencies, we find there's so many acronyms. I just saw Jan was sharing the Eqip program. So I put in the chat, what Eqip stands for. As we are going through this, if we start using acronyms, don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask what that acronym is. That's what we're here for. That's one of the roles that we do, is try to untangle that alphabet soup of federal acronyms. We also have connectors across the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin between Renewing the Countryside and Michael Field's Agricultural Institute. And what we do is we can help individual farmers getting their meetings with the FSA. Sometimes it's a struggle getting those meetings set, helping you get a farm number. In order to qualify for the Eqip programs with NRCS, you have to have a farm number. And so we can help you with that by working with FSA. We can also help provide guidance at your FSA office. If we go in with you, that's something that we are capable of helping you with. And we would strongly encourage having somebody go with you, because it's a little nerve-wracking going into an FSA office and not knowing what questions to ask. But we can also connect you with farmers in the area that are doing similar things. Here's a map of where our regional connectors are. It is very definitely on, we're out throughout, and I kind of went in a little bit deeper to show you the counties that we're working in. In doing that, we do have some regional meetings that are going to be scheduled soon, and I'm going to be promoting that with the SFA and Renewing the Countryside and all kinds of organizations. So watch for those regional meetings if it makes sense. We would love to talk with you about these programs. Today is about high tunnels, and so I am going to actually stop sharing my screen and hand it over to the next presenter. But I would love to be able to help you answer any questions in regards to FSA, the Farm Service Agency, and ways that I can help with that. Back to you, Jan.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, next we get to hear from Melissa Driscoll from Seven Songs Farm. And I had the pleasure of being out to Melissa's farm for the first time, which is really kind of surprising because we don't live that far apart. A couple of weeks ago, and got to see her high tunnel, and quickly learned what an expert she is on having done a lot of research, I think, in putting up her own. So she is going to take it from here and tell us about high tunnels and her experience.
All right, thanks a lot, Jan and Sarah. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Let's see. All right. So can folks see that?
Yes.
All right. All right. So I'm just going to talk about my high tunnel experience a little bit, and then I don't know if questions are all the way at the end or if we're doing questions after each thing. Maybe one of you can chime in and tell me.
Jan?
Are we doing questions right after mine, or are we waiting till the end?
I think the plan was to wait till the end, but I think we can do a couple right after yours because yours kind of goes into detail. So let's plan on doing that.
Okay. And if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. There's a chance that some of us can answer the questions while she's going, but I can stop her if I see those questions.
Sure.
And Melissa, we're seeing 6 squares on the screen. If you click on one of them to make them bigger, that would make it easier for us to see. Thanks.
There, is that better?
Nope, I'm still seeing, I guess, 8 squares. I couldn't count fast on the fly, but we can still see them. So I'm seeing 8 small squares.
Maybe click on the from the beginning.
Is that what you want?
I'm still.
Are you seeing just one big picture on your screen, Melissa?
Plus a little tiny thing in the upper right-hand corner. It doesn't bother me.
I think what you might need to do is to unshare and then share again. I was having that problem too. Like for some reason it doesn't.
All right, stop share.
There you go. And then select the screen that you want to see.
All right.
There you go. Much better.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here today. And I'm just going to talk about The choices I made with my high tunnel that I was really thankful that I made, and just some experiences that when I put up mine about more than 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago, other people were having a bunch of different issues with theirs, and I was able to avoid those. So it's just a picture of my main high tunnel, which I often call it a hoop house. So if I say hoop house or high tunnel, to me, those are the same thing. In the foreground, you see ginger, and then you see turmeric, and then you see raspberries. And I had raspberries for many years in my high tunnel, which I loved. And then the spotted winged Drosophila fly came along, and I got rid of the raspberries because it just wasn't profitable anymore. Now, how do I do the next? How do I do the next slide?
Can you click on the screen? Does it just automatically advance it?
Nope. Oh, there we go. Oh, whoa. Go back.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh. I'm so confused. Okay. Sorry, guys. Try again.
Oh,
From the beginning. All right, so in 20.
We have the little squares again, Melissa, sorry.
Okay, I cannot see those. So are they covering something up?
no, we just see all of your slides is one across the thing instead of the one big one. So I think, again, if you stop sharing and share it again, now that you're back at the beginning, it'll work. We're just wanting you to jump through as many hoops as we can get you to.
Does that look better?
Yes, that's it.
All right, so does it say 2011 remodel nor'easter on the top?
It does.
Thank you. All right, so this is just a picture of the hoop house that I put up in 2011. It's 32 feet by 70 feet. And a couple things I just wanted to point out right away is one reason I chose that 32 by 70 feet is I felt like that was the best deal for the money at the time that NRCS, or the Natural Resources Conservation Service, did. Like, they had a certain percentage that they paid, and I was looking at, how many square feet could I get under plastic for kind of the least amount of money, like I was looking at that situation. So I bought this kit. Just closing my office door. I bought this kit and installed it myself, but with help from like 30 different friends over a number of different weekends. I wanted to show you that I first had the soil around the hoop house raised up because I had a friend who her hoop house had been put in kind of a dip in the land. And because this hoop house sheds a lot of water, all the water ended up inside her hoop house, which, it flooded all the time. So I realized I really need to get someone to form the land so that I have a little rise, that the hoop house can sit on a rise and the water will go away from the hoop house. So that was important. I also chose really high sidewalls, which I show in that second picture down in the summer. For me, having really good ventilation is important against diseases. I have plants in the hoop house that need to get visited by bees, by other pollinators. And so I want them in the summer to really be able to get in there easily. And I want in the summer, the hoop house to not overheat. So you can see I have well, you'll see in a minute, but I have automated venting that's at the tip of the hoop house. And then I can open not only the sidewalls very high, but large doors on either end so that I can just get a lot of ventilation in there. I also chose to put in plumbing right away so that, if you want to use your hoop house in the wintertime, how are you going to water? It's a little hard to drag hoses across the snow when it's 20 below outside. Like, hoses don't work well then. So I realized if I had a frost-free hydrant inside, on a warm day, if you've never grown under plastic, I just say that it could be 20 below outside in January, but if it's sunny, it'll be 70 in your hoop house or even hotter. So you can use your hoses as long as they don't have to go outside. So having a frost-free hydrant was really important. And advance, I hope that's what I'm about to do. All right. My hoop house also has 2 layers of plastic on the top with an inflation fan in between those 2 layers of plastic. So at the top of this photo, there's a little thing with an electric cord going to it. That's the inflation fan. And so when we moved to our farm, we were shocked at how darn windy it is here. I mean, it's not unusual. The weather service will say breezy today, and it's 45-mile-per-hour winds or 50 or 55, you know. And I realized that unless I had 2 layers of plastic, it shook the building. So whenever this inflation fan somehow doesn't work, it breaks. You know, we've replaced it once over the 10 years, and that inflation isn't working, the whole building shakes in the wind. But when that inflation fan is on and operating, the whole structure is much more rigid. So I really, in a windy area, I really recommend the inflation fan. And then there's some diagonal bracing you can see kind of going from just near that hip board. There's a board up a little ways down. That diagonal bracing on that in that area and also on the roof of the hoop house is really important for wind as well. And then I also chose, because I wanted to be able to like go to work, my off-farm job, and not worry about the hoop house or even be able to like deliver, I wanted some automatic venting in the hoop house. So I have these large vents on the top. And so I knew I needed an electrical box. You can also do automatic venting without electricity. There are openers that open without electric. So, or you can, you know, have a solar thing that runs some electric in your hoop house. So I don't have lights in here, but I do have automatic vents that are fed by the electricity. Yep. Let's see. So this is just a picture of my end wall of the hoop house. So on the top, that's that big square piece on top. That's the automatic venting. Then you see, I chose to have, these are more expensive, but I chose to have a roll-up door. On the other end, which I'll show you, I made a door myself. This hoop house also happens to have a wooden end wall, and do metal end wall, wooden end wall. It's kind of up to you. I ended up buying cedar boards for all the boards to try to have them not rot. And I'm certified organic, and I wasn't certified when I first started, but I wanted the option for that. So I did not use treated lumber. That was just a choice. I decided to use cedar. And I am, after 11 years, and you know, this can be a very wet space sometimes. I have a little bit of rot like at one end of my hoop house that I need to work on this year, but I would say most of the boards are doing really well. The other thing I will note is that because I have so much wind in my location, I put cement around each of the 4 corners of the posts that I put in, like each of the 4 corner posts of the hoop house, the metal posts. I have cement around each of the 4 corners, and then midway down one of the posts, I have cement on each side. And then around this big door, this roll-up door, the wood that goes down is in cement on each side of that door and on each side of the human door. And over time, I've put in shelving just to keep little odds and ends, and I have a place where I keep tools and I hang hoses. You know, this has just kind of happened over time. And then also, so on the left, on the photo on the left, you see my homemade door on the other end. So that's just a wooden door that I created. And I initially just had hoop house plastic on it. After a lot of use, I put polycarbonate plastic on it because it's much more rigid and it's going to last longer for me. But initially I just used hoop house plastic. And I've replaced the plastic on this hoop house, the main plastic, not the end walls, I think 2 times since then. I once got a hailstorm and replaced the plastic. So within 2 years, which was a bummer, I got a hailstorm, and then it wouldn't inflate because it had hail holes all over it. So I replaced the plastic the first 2 years, and then after 6 more years, I replaced the plastic again. And each time I replace the plastic, you know, I'm doing that for myself. It takes maybe 4 or 5 people, and you need a very, very calm day, which we get in the summer. But on the right, I just wanted to show kind of in the summer what it looks like. I often have tomatoes on one half that are very trellised all the way up to the ceiling. And on the left picture, I'm showing the tomato trellis wires that I installed later to hang my tomatoes from. On the picture on the right, the left part of that, that's ginger again. So most summers now, I have a tradition of planting tomatoes and ginger. And right now in my hoop house, I have cover crops in there. And they're just small, but they're getting big. Anything else to show? Nope, I think. So then I started running out of space in my hoop house last year. I started farming full time right around the pandemic in 2020. It was very odd timing. I didn't know a pandemic was coming when I decided to leave my part-time job. But so last summer, I decided to build a homemade smaller hoop house. This is at the kind of the highest end of one of my fields. I did not form the earth to make this like I did with the other ones. So we'll see whether I have flooding. I don't think I will, but we'll see. And this one is a homemade hoop house. I did not get NRCS funds for this one. I don't have plumbing and electric in here. So this is much more simple. It's 12 feet by 60 feet. And I used a hoop bender that I bought online. I think it was at Farmer's Friend. And they, and also another place had end wall kits that were made of metal. So you could have a strong end wall. I do not think I would buy those kits again because it was a lot of cutting metal. And I've done a lot of cutting wood in my life, not a lot of cutting metal. And I found it to be a pain in the butt. But these roll-up cranks you see on the side that opens the whole side, I bought those at Johnny Selected Seeds. This cost me, so my initial hoop house, the big one you saw, that in 2011, the total cost for that was about $13,000. So, you know, I moved earth around, I have electric, I have plumbing. But it really served me a long time, and it has served me really well. Then this one cost me about $3,000, and that's not paying for labor. I did labor, and I had a friend from the city come out and help me a number of days. But you can see the similarities of this are really a lot of venting in here. Like instead of having roll up sides that only go up maybe 2 feet, mine really roll up, you know, 4 or 5 feet, 4 feet, 3.5, 4 feet. I really want in the summer to be able to vent this thoroughly so that things don't overheat. That's really important to me. And also that insects can get in and out of there. So I just wanted to review quickly the high tunnel features that I think are a good idea. Building up a pad of soil to provide good drainage for your high tunnel. Putting cement in the ground around some of the metal posts, especially if you think it's at all windy in the area. I heard of other people building, using NRCS money at the time I built my hoop house, and their whole hoop house flew away. I mean, it just got ruined within a year or 2 years. And once you've invested all this time and effort, you do not want it to fly away. So then I invested a little bit in wind bracing and 2 layers of plastic with inflation in between, just because I have so much high wind here. I used cedar boards. You can also use metal on the places where I used boards. You can have metal that costs more, but probably lasts longer. Automatic venting. I have large high vents on each side and on the tip, top of the hoop house. I have large doors so I can bring in equipment. So I have a walk behind tractor. I want to easily be able to get that in there and use it. But I also like to have human doors on each end so that I can just, without opening a huge door, like say in the wintertime, I can dig out and just, the human can go in and out. Electricity, having a frost-free water spigot in there is really important. And I just have some shelving, storage areas, and tomato trellis wires. Let's see.
Melissa, there's 2 questions in the chat. Do you mind if I toss these ones
I was
out?
just gonna do one more thing.
Oh, yep.
This is my last slide, and then I'll take questions. So another option is low tunnels. So I've used these as well in my farm, and they're very inexpensive. And if you're just trying out growing under plastic, this is a very inexpensive way to do it. I'm guessing you don't even need our NRCS funds. You use electrical conduit and a pipe bender, and you can borrow mine if you want to. I don't use it much anymore. You can borrow other people's. And I can train people about how to make these low tunnels too, which do stand up to wind pretty well when they're closed. I close them before a big wind comes, but just lots of options, sizes, and I'll take questions now.
Thanks, Melissa. The 2 questions that are in the chat is, can one person crank up your sides on the homemade hoop house?
Yes, very easily. Yep.
And then on your homemade hoop house, does it stay as warm as your commercial hoop house?
I don't think it does, but I haven't, I should look at my data for that, because I do have little, I wonder if I even can tell you that right now. Maybe I can tell you that right now in just a second. We have little Accurate sensors, and so we can look online and just see how hot each of the places is. So my hoop house today is 40 degrees right now, and my new hoop house is 39. So the little one is 39 and the big one is 40. I don't know. But it's really overcast here today, so that makes it more equal maybe. Could be that with sun, one of them.
Awesome. There's also a few additional questions, and I think I'm actually going to let you answer some of the questions in the chat. There was some questions about, does your homemade hoop, oh no, wait, the one above it. Are the high tunnel sides left rolled up all summer?
I leave them rolled up once it's warm enough for tomatoes and ginger. So I would say that I use the rolling up and down mechanism a lot more in spring and fall. So in the summer, I just leave it pretty much wide open unless there is a huge windstorm, a huge like thunderstorm coming. Then I roll everything down, because the buildings, those plastic buildings, are much stronger against wind when they're completely down, and usually that's a cool time anyway, like a thunderstorm's coming, it's all dark and rainy and stuff, so you're not going to overheat. The thing is, as soon as the sun comes back out, I want to open those wide up again. But yeah, most of the summer that's just wide open. Yep.
I actually think if you could put your information in the chat, that would be beneficial for those to reach out to you, because there's some
Yes.
questions about,
Yeah.
you know, building the low tunnels, and that's going to be a different conversation. And I'm going to hand it over to Jan.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Do I need to stop sharing? Is that good?
yes, why didn't you stop sharing? That was really great, and lots of good information and lots of good questions in there. We might have to do another webinar where we dive in deeper to all of these questions. And I'm sure there are others of you on here who have high tunnels yourself that may have some recommendations too. So, but with that, we're going to shift over to another part of our session today, and that is talking with a couple of farmers who have more recently gone through the NRCS process. Since Melissa, it's been almost a decade since you've done that, and we just want to let people and help people understand what that process looks like. And so we thought a good way to do that was to invite a couple of farmers on to talk about their experience. And then after that, we're going to turn it over to Christopher Hogue from NRCS, who will talk us through the program itself. So if I can introduce you to Lindsay Mays from Morningscape Farm. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi.
And also to Kifa Abdi from Abdi Mayfield Farm. So on very short notice, both of these folks came forward willing to answer these questions, and really appreciate it. And so I'm going to ask them each mostly all similar questions except for one. So I'm going to start out, and maybe we'll start with Abdi answering this one. Can you tell me a little bit about your farm and things like how long have you been farming? What do you grow? Where is it located?
So my name is Kifa. I farm in Lindstrom, Minnesota, so about 50 by Taylor's Falls, 50 miles north of the cities. It's very small holding. I have goats and a few sheep and a couple cows, but my main production is chicken and turkey, poultry, and eggs. How long we've been doing for ourselves just for a few years, but last 3 years is when I've been trying to really farm. And it has been a difficult journey because you have to learn everything from scratch, like how to navigate in a new country and a new climate system. Did that answer your questions? Or
Yeah, no, that did. That's great. What was the climate that you came from prior to farming in Minnesota?
Well, I grew up in Western France, where it's Atlantic Ocean. So it rains, but it doesn't get as cold. It never freezes, no snow. Coldest gets about 50, 45. And then prior to that is Somalia, Northeast Africa.
Okay.
Which is
so much different climates than we have here. I'm glad you're surviving the snow and cold. All right, Lindsay, can you tell us about your farm and how long you've been farming and what you raise?
Yeah, I farm in Spring Valley, Wisconsin, just about an hour east of the Twin Cities, not too far from Minnesota. We have 16 acres and we rent some additional pasture. We've been here since 2015. We raise a little bit of grass-fed beef and about an acre of diversified vegetables for CSA. And we have a 30 by 120 high tunnel that we put up through Eqip.
Okay, great. Well, that leads me to my next question is how did, and Lindsay, maybe you can start on this one, is how did you learn about NRCS and its programs, specifically also related to the high tunnel, the opportunity for the high tunnel support?
Yeah, I first learned about it when I was working on another CSA farm in Frederick, Wisconsin. I was working there and they received funding through Eqip. And so we helped put up that tunnel. And we knew that when we had our own farm that we wanted to apply for the program.
Great. And Kifa, I understand you've applied for a high tunnel too. Where are you at?
I did apply and I did get, I'm my NRC person here. She's a wonderful person. And the way I found out actually is through a friend's farm that I was helping out because the wind blew it away. I don't know who said it. Was it Melissa? Yeah, the wind blew it away here. So we had as a community get together, getting a new plastic and reassembling the metal. So I asked her where she got it because I wanted to ask, I needed something like that to grow traditional herbs, but also figs. That was my hope. And she said, well, there is a farm program you can apply. So I applied. And then they said, well, you don't even have a farm number. So they put me through with, get me in touch with the FSA, and I got a farm number. So they were very helpful in my case. So I just got a phone call saying that they will deliver mine in a couple of weeks.
It's exciting.
I'm very excited and scared.
So that's really good to hear that, you know, the person that you've been working with at NRCS has been very helpful.
Yes.
Maybe I will ask Lindsay and then we'll come back to you, Keith. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? So you knew you wanted to put up a high tunnel because of your experience on the other farm. How did you go about it? And if you can walk us a little bit through the parts of the process that you remember. I don't know how long ago it was, but
Yeah, it's been a little while. It was 2016, I think, when we first contacted NRCS. I sent them an email and then we set up an in-person meeting at the office. So we went and talked through the different programs. We knew we wanted to do the high tunnel program, but there were some other things that we were thinking about too. We ended up doing the rotational grazing fencing program too. So we met in person at the office and then they came out and did a site visit and walked us through it. And then after that, it was mostly kind of back and forth paperwork, getting the contract finalized and approved.
Great. And Kifa, how was your process? Was it similar to that or different?
They came out and they did the site visit, and I actually applied both like the fencing for grazing, and I didn't get that. So I waited to hear for a long time, and it was after I reached out a few times. But also the challenge for me again was, as an immigrant, there was a lot of misunderstanding. I didn't understand what evolved. The paperwork was simple, at least for me. But the waiting time, was it guarantee, you know, something, or is it like up to whatever funding that will come through? It was not clear, if that makes sense. So there was a lot of confusion on going back and forth.
You know, that makes a lot of sense to me because I actually am not getting a high tunnel, but getting assistance to do brush management on our land. And so I've just recently been through the process myself. And even though I work with this program and you'd think I'd have a better understanding of it, it still was confusing to me. So I think that that's not unusual. And I think, you know, there are a lot of reasons for that. And I didn't feel like it was, I mean, I felt the person who I was working with at NRCS was really helpful and nice, but they were just, you know, there was some of it was, you know, talking about forms and and, you know, again, using those acronyms that I didn't know what they stood for, right, and the timeline. So I think that that's a pretty common thing. And I think that Christopher will talk to us more about that too. So once you, so the way this works from my understanding with the high tunnels is that you get there's a certain amount that NRCS will pay for square foot. So it doesn't cover the whole cost of the high tunnel. So how did you all kind of on the financing side of it, how did you manage that? And how did you complete the contract? Because that also, I think in most cases, they don't give you the money up front. You have to finish it first and then they give you the money. So maybe Lindsay, you could talk about that first.
Yeah, it was kind of a stretch for us to finance. We did the high tunnel and the fencing in the same year. So we had to have all that money up front, which was definitely a struggle as beginning farmers. And then it also, we didn't get, we saved all our receipts and submitted them. And then, once the project was done, they came out and looked at it and then reimbursed us for the expenses. So there's definitely a big gap in there where you're putting a lot of money out. So it's something to be aware of and work it into your budget if you can.
Great. Kiva, how about you?
So that was where there was a lot of confusion for me. So I applied for 95 by 30 or something like that. And they said, that's a really big, but we will get back to you. And then they said, okay, you get this amount of money, a little under $10,000. But so I said, does that mean I can make it smaller so I have spaces so stronger with the wind? And then they said, no, if you make it smaller than what you stated earlier, we will deduct because it's 5 per square feet. But even to get to that answer, it took forever, months, back and forth, because I was not clear. At one point, another farmer told me, you can make it as small or as big you want. And then they give you the difference to buy for the wood and all the other things that goes with the doors and so on. And they said, no. This is not supposed to pay for your whole deal. You have to come up whatever extra you need on your own to even make it viable. So that was the learning process for me. So I ended up putting more money into it because I didn't want to put the hoop house and then fly it away.
Yes, you've seen that happen.
Yeah, I have, and it mangled the metal at my friend when that happened. So I wanted to make it, instead of 6 feet apart, 4 feet for also snow barrier. And so I did few research, I talked to people, and of course, everybody had a different answer. So it's best really to do more research on your own. I reached out to the U of M and they were more helpful to tell me, yeah, you don't want a 6 feet apart, you want a 4 feet. You want to have a wind barrier. So I went that route for advice because the person who was helping me, though they're very kind from NRC, they didn't know all those details, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, I know the funding part, and I know it's a square footage. If you make it any smaller, we will take the difference back. If you make it same amount, and we will give you $5,000, and then you come up with the other 5,000 or whatever. And I said, well, it's gonna cost well over that. She's like, well, that's the whole point. You have to put skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing I did was I found a local person who had actually same exact hoop house I was looking for, which was only a year and a half old. And they were willing, because of health reasons, they were willing to sell it to me, but they will not fund it at all.
Oh, okay.
Even though that would have saved me a lot of money on my part and for the program, interestingly, because
Right.
wood, everybody knows, is very expensive, and I want to untreat it cedar, so I don't like any kind of chemicals on my land. That alone is going to cost me $4,000 just to do the doors and so on. So that was like she had to go and talk to somebody else to find out if that was viable, because sometimes they approve it and sometimes they say no. So that took 2 months waiting for me to find out, and then at the end was no.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that probably people who use the program, as well as the people who work at NRCS, sometimes feel frustrations because the NRCS folks are, they're kind of bound by what's in the
Right.
rules that they get, and then even though sometimes it doesn't make kind of logical sense, it's just kind of the things that have to be done. So, well, those are both very useful, and I think examples. I think one of the things that I'd also say is that the goal of these conservation connectors that I showed you earlier is really to help people to navigate some of that. So, hopefully, if we had had this in place prior, Kifa, maybe you wouldn't have had to wait quite so long to get some of those answers, and some of those things could have been explained. I just want to give you each one last chance to, if you have any advice for people who are thinking about putting up a high tunnel and working with the NRCS. Lindsay? Kifa, you go first. Go ahead, Kifa.
So for me, what I will say is try not to ask many questions, but take with a grain of salt, but also do as much research, including layout of the land, because I had an idea where I was going to put the hoop house. And when I find out how much electricity and burying of water and taking that was going to cost me another $8,000, which I don't have. So I had to change sites. I asked 6 different farmers, did you need permit? And 2 said yes, and 4 said no. I called the NRC office. They said, we don't think so, but we're not sure. So I just went to my county, and they said, well, if it is a county road, yes. If it's townships, perhaps no, but that's also predicates if it's the distance from the road and so on. So I had to do much more research than I thought was, and including, where I'm going to put it needs to be a little bit higher and leveled up and not waterlogged and so on, like Melissa said earlier.
That's a really good point, that zoning piece, bringing that in, and it does sound like you did a lot of research, Kifa.
Yeah.
Lindsay, how about you?
I'd say don't be shy about reaching out to other farmers that that have hoop houses, or even if you don't really know them, but just know of them. Like, we all need help putting these things up. Like, you can't pull plastic on your own. You need help. So yeah, don't be shy about enlisting neighbors, friends, family, and definitely other farmers for help.
Great. And on that, I will just quickly say that there are a number of us from organizations who are looking at the possibility of pulling together volunteer crews that could, and expertise that could help farmers with the actual construction process, because we do realize that is, or we've heard that some of us know from experience, and others of us have heard that this is kind of a real issue and you need to get it up if you don't have folks. So that's something that's underway. And I guess the other thing I would say is that there are a number of options for if you need kind of short-term loans and to hold you over from when you put when you need to purchase to when you actually get the funds from NRCS. And I have a list of those. Some of them are individual investment clubs of people who want to see this kind of farming be successful. So feel free to reach out to me personally if any of you are in the need of something like that. So with that, I am going to thank Lindsay Go ahead, Kifa.
How do we get your information?
Oh, somebody will put it in the chat.
Okay.
Sarah or Lisa. And we'll also send it out with an email with
Okay. Thank
for
you.
everybody who came. So thank you both, Kifa and Lindsay. It was great to have you. With that, I am going to introduce Christopher Hogue, who is from the Natural Resource Conservation Service. He is, I think, because I know titles have changed, but district conservationist at the Waite Park Customer Service Team, which is up in kind of near St. Cloud, I would say. So
Yeah,
I
it's right
got,
next to St. Cloud.
okay, and I got to hear Christopher at the Sustainable Farming Association conference just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really talking on a different, kind of talking more broadly, but I think you'll really, he's a great presenter, has some great information, and we will give him the screen, and then after he is done, we'll open it up to questions for Christopher and then anyone else. I'll let you take it away, Christopher.
All right, let me know if this goes and shares correctly.
Yes.
Okay, glad to meet everybody here on the Zoom call today. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to present for everybody. I'm just going to kind of cover high tunnels briefly, and then we'll talk environmental quality incentive program, which is Eqip. You can see right there, that is where I am located. I am the customer service team lead for the Waite Park Customer Service Team. I cover 6 counties and 4 field offices, and I have staff in each one of those 4 field offices that work with high tunnels. I noticed that there are some people from other states and other countries on the call. If you are located anywhere in the state, you have an NRCS office location close to you. If you are anywhere in the country, there is a good chance that you have an NRCS office also close to you. In another country, you're gonna have to be doing some Google searching. So that's a little bit out of my area. But as you can see, we'll go through here. What is a high tunnel? A high tunnel is a conservation practice available through the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. The practice assists agriculture producers in extending the growing season. It's usually for vegetables, or usually it really pertains to whatever they say here. It's a high value crop. It's really whichever crop you're looking to grow. We don't really throw that out there. High tunnel systems, they really are pretty much an enclosed polyethylene or polycarbonate plastic or fabric covered structure, and how they're built and how you build them, that's kind of your deal and how you do that. We usually go off constructed manufactured kits, whichever you go with. We just like to see prior to your construction kind of what you go with, and that way we can make sure that it fits our standards and specs, because all of the high tunnels that are built need to meet NRCS standards and specs so we can certify them, which usually isn't too difficult. You can see here they're constructed manufactured kits in accordance to the manufacturer's recommendation. The high tunnel frame must be constructed with metal, wood, or durable plastic, and must be at least 6 feet in height at the peak. So you can see that it's not too complicated to meet our standards for a high tunnel. And then why do people get high tunnels? High tunnels lengthen the time frames for local market or for local marketing of produce. It increases sustainability, lowering energy and transport inputs. They can assist producers in transitioning to specialty crops. Some of the crops that we grow around here in high tunnels can't really be grown outside. So that's kind of why we use high tunnels. For NRCS, we're not so focused on the, and I don't want to say this wrong, we're not so focused on the crop production side of it as much as we are addressing resource concerns. All of our conservation practices must address a resource concern. So when you're dealing with a high tunnel, our resource concerns that we're dealing with is improving your plant quality, improving soil quality, reducing nutrient and pest transportation, improving air quality through reduced transportation inputs, and reducing energy costs. So that's kind of how we go through our process when we're looking at why are we funding high tunnels. So that's kind of our resource concerns. High tunnel requirements, the high tunnel must be on a site that's cropland. Okay, that definition's been kind of messed with a little bit. It's not really what a lot of folks think cropland is, like large farming operations. That's not really what, in this situation, we're calling cropland. What we're calling cropland here is it should be located in a garden site or a site that is applicable for a high tunnel. Like, we don't want you to clear trees to put a high tunnel in. That's kind of the gist of it, okay? Crops grown on the high tunnel must be planted directly into the natural soil profile, meaning that you cannot put in a bunch of tables or put in pots. You have to basically plant it in the ground or in some type of raised bed, which is fine to do that. Electrical, heating, and mechanical ventilation systems are allowed, but as you can see, must be installed at participants' expense. We do not cover the cost for the electrical. We cover the cost specifically for the high tunnel alone. I've seen some other posts that have come through. Do we cover construction costs or people to help do that? No, we do not. We just, and we'll get into the Eqip side of it here in a little bit. The seasons are the high tunnels are intended for seasonal structures which are not designed to sustain snow load. Basically, we're going to go with what you locate as your manufacturer and whatever they say. And those are things you should be taking into account when you're doing these high tunnels, is the weather, how they're going to be positioned, where they're going to be positioned, and how you're going to anchor them. Because in some of those high areas, you might want to put concrete footings in there, okay? And so that's going to increase the cost. We're not going to pay an extra for concrete footings. We have a one regional cost for the high tunnels themselves. So there are some things that you're going to want to do some research on and look to see how best to implement your high tunnel, and then take that into account on the full cost, and then what the agency or NRCS, which is Natural Resources Conservation Service, is going to provide you as far as cost assistance. High tunnels must be maintained for a minimum of 5 years. That's basically the lifespan of the practice of high tunnel. So the participants are responsible to repair and replace any material damaged by wind, snow, or other weather conditions. There are some situations where it's an act of God, and we can kind of, there's a little bit of a leeway when you have an act of God type of thing where a tornado comes in and hits it and knocks it out. We're not going to come back on top of you and say, oh, wait, you're not living up to your side of the contract. So in those situations, the agency usually is pretty flexible. So now, what type of Eqip cost assistance is available? As you can see, a manufactured frame covered with 4 to 6 mil plastic. So that's just your typical plastic for a high tunnel. This year, now this is something that folks kind of have a little bit of an issue with, but our cost assistance rates fluctuate from year to year based on the cost of the product the year before. So if you can envision this, our 2022 rates here are maybe a little lower than what 2022 rates are going to be when you purchase it in 2023. All right, so that's just kind of the way the government is. All right, that's the way the program is for all. We have over 200 conservation practices that we work with producers all over Minnesota. That's just kind of the way the Eqip program works. So for 2022, it was $2.65 per square foot for a regular Eqip applicant. And for historically underserved, which you reviewed earlier, and we can go through that again if you would like, they're $3.97 a foot. So when you're going and looking at this, you need to realize that we pay per square foot. And I know, Khalif, you were saying that once you reduced the size of your high tunnel, we would also reduce the dollars. The reason why that is because we pay per square foot, and anything past any reduction in that square footage, we have to, by program requirements, reduce the cost assistance because we're only paying for a specific number of square feet. And this Eqip cost assistance is available to anyone who applies up to, and this is the thing that you need to remember, up to a maximum of $10,000. Okay, so if you have a high tunnel and you want to do it 400 feet long by 50 foot wide, and you're going to build this thing, it's going to be the Taj Mahal with pillars on the front, that's great. You can go do that, but we're only going to pay $10,000 for it. That's all we can do. That is our maximum amount allowed by the program itself. So if you want to pay for something like that, that's great. We cannot provide that extra assistance. What is Eqip? Eqip is a voluntary program that helps agricultural producers in a manner that promotes agricultural production and environmental quality as compatible goals. So basically what we're trying to do with Eqip is assist you in the production of your crop while assisting in enhancing the environmental quality. So basically we're looking at soil health, plant health, those kind of things. Through Eqip, the agricultural producer can receive financial and technical assistance. And I noticed a lot of people mention that their NRCS staff came out and made the first initial field visit. And that is absolutely step number one for all NRCS staff. When you get an application or you get someone interested at the counter, we will go out to your site and we will review your site with you. We will walk your farm. That is what we want to do. We want to see your farming operation. We want to see how you want to operate your high tunnel or whatever it is that you're doing, so we can make a plan that works out for you and basically optimizes our environmental benefit and helps you optimize your production. How do you get started? Pretty simple. To get started, NRCS, like I mentioned, we look to work with you one-on-one to develop a conservation plan that meets your goals and vision for your land. We want to see what you want to do, your short-term, long-term, future expansion. We want to kind of see how we can make everything fit together and develop a roadmap for all the conservation practices you need to achieve your goals. High tunnels is one that we're talking about today. And I know that there's probably some of you, and I've heard you mention, we've got some grazing, we've got some chickens, we've got some other things that are going on out there. NRCS has over 200 conservation practices that we're willing to assist producers with. High tunnel is just one, all right? We've got Eqip cost assistance that helps with prescribed grazing or direct market type grazing operations. So if you have something like that where you need assistance with fencing, we have opportunities to help you, and we're more than happy and willing to work with you. Financial assistance contracts through Eqip program cover part. Okay, remember, we cover part of the cost. We do not cover all of the cost. At no point in time in any of our documentation do we cover 100% of the cost. Okay, the reason why is you need to have, like was mentioned before, a little skin in the game. Okay, Now, what do we offer? Theoretically, we offer a payment rate, as we mentioned before, about $3.97 per square foot. Now, I'm not the math genius that does the voodoo math that makes this all play out the way it's supposed to, but theoretically, we're supposed to pay somewhere close to 50% for a regular Eqip producer, and up to 75 to 90% for a historically underserved producer. Now, does this always break out the same? No, it does not, because these payment rates are actually done regionally. So our payments for high tunnels are actually done across the Midwest. So a high tunnel, say in Springfield, Illinois, might cost $10,000, where one here in Minneapolis might cost $12,000. So they're going to average that out, and that's going to be the cost for the high tunnel, if that kind of makes sense. And I mean, I'm making it very simple so you guys kind of see where it comes from. It's not we go through your bills and we give you 75% off the top. That's not the way it works. It's a regional payment rate that we give. Who can apply? This is very interesting because it's extremely complicated. Very, very complicated. Anybody can apply. If you are a farmer, you are in production, whether you are direct market or you are large farmer, anybody can apply. The best way to know if it fits is to contact your local NRCS office. There is always someone that's willing to work with producers who are interested in doing any kind of conservation practices out there on the land. If you choose to move forward, your local NRCS conservationist will guide you through the application process. Absolutely. All right. We will step you through step by step individually as we go through the process. Now, remember, this is the government. Okay. And I know how you all love the government, but we are the government. And we do move slowly, okay? So like Kifa said, it took her a while to get responses. Depending on the time of the year when you start your Eqip application will also determine sometimes how quickly you will get responses back. If you start, we have a cycling period for Eqip. So Eqip is, like right now, we're going through the Eqip ranking assessment. We're obligating funds right now. If you come in with a new application right now, there might be a phone call. Hey, great. Nice to meet you. Thanks for applying. We'll get to you here in just a little bit, but you may not hear again from your NRCS contact person for another 2 months. Because we're trying to take care of workload right now who are ready to go and looking to do things in the spring. So in that situation, you're going to have to kind of be a little patient. And then once we get through those, then we start picking up the 2023 applicants and we start working through them, because we want to plan already prepared before we get to the basically the funding cycle. So that's kind of the way that it works. So it takes time to get where you want to go. So absolutely do your research, ask your questions, but be patient, because your NRCS staff has not forgotten you. It's just, we've got to wrap up some things first before we can pick you up and take you to the next step. So when that happens, there's nothing wrong with giving a phone call and saying, hey, you know what, where are we at on this? We like that. It keeps you up on our radar so we can make sure that we service you correctly. So applications are ranked based on the state priorities. If you're funded, NRCS will offer you an Eqip contract. That is absolutely correct also. The thing about it that you need to remember is you all are interested in high tunnels, which is absolutely awesome. The problem is, just because you guys are all interested in high tunnels doesn't mean there isn't about 1,000 other people who are interested in high tunnels. So we only have a limited amount of funding, which is unfortunate, but it is the truth and the reality of the situation. So the applications are ranked, and the highest folks get the funding. That's just the way it is. We don't have enough funding to fund everyone, so we rank them all out individually, and it's a numbered system, and that's the way they're broken out. I think we had, and don't quote me on numbers, but I think last year we had over 200 or 300 high tunnel applications, and we had funding enough for maybe 100. So, I mean, it's competitive, very, very competitive. Socially disadvantaged, historically underserved producers, they kind of have a special pot of money that's a little more open, but still it is very, very competitive. So it is important that when you do your high tunnel that you're looking at all of your resource concerns when you're doing those. Applications for Eqip are accepted throughout the year. Yes, we accept them throughout the year, but that does not mean that we will service them directly when we get them. Please remember that. On my team right now, I'm supposed to have 12 staff. I now have 5. So I have 5 staff over 6 counties. And so that's a lot of work that we have. We had 232 applications in 2022, and I had 5 staff doing it. That's a lot of work. So if you give me a new application like in January saying you want to do your work in the spring, we're not going to probably pick you up until probably June or July. So do be patient with us. We will get to you. So we want to work with you. Is my land eligible? Absolutely. It's eligible if it's cropland or you have some sort of garden ability. We do not want you clearing trees to put a high tunnel up, okay? Am I eligible? Yes. There is probably a 99.9% chance that you're eligible. There are a few people who end up not being eligible, but that is kind of an FSA. That's kind of been mentioned before about the FSA process, but FSA has their own process. We do not determine eligibility, FSA does. So who is FSA? FSA is the Farm Service Agency, and they are basically are the keeper of the records. That's really all it is. That's a lot of what they do. They have some other, that's what they do for the agency, NRCS. They keep the records to make sure that everybody has a farm. Somebody mentioned earlier, Sarah mentioned earlier that they determine the farm number. They also ensure that you control or own eligible land. If you don't have control land or you rent the land, then we have other steps we have to walk through. They make sure you meet adjusted gross income. Basically, that's your earning for your household for that year or individual. Whether you're HEL compliant, which is whether when you do your high tunnel, you have to kind of identify where you're going to put your high tunnel and what your farming operation is going to be, so they know that you are HEL compliant and you're not sod busting any wetlands. Again, all of these things listed here, your NRCS or FSA contact will help walk you through this to make sure that you have the information that you need and you're ready to take the next step. So where do I get more information? I have a short video, but that's more on high tunnels. For those folks, and I'm just going for the folks that are on the I-94 corridor, okay? And that's basically Stearns through down to the Minnesota River. You can always talk to Kelly Bistadu or Logan Berg, okay? Or you can always call or talk to me. And for some reason, I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't put my contact information in here, but I will put it in the chat. Don't ask me why. And I will make sure that that's in the chat, and you can call or email me directly, and I can give you any information that you need to have so you can get where you need to go. And I can even give you contacts for just about any county in the country, give or take a little bit. So that's the basic gist of it, and then we'll go for questions. 60 questions. I either did a really good job or I did a really bad job.
Thanks so much, Christopher. Well, we have, it is about 1:28 and we were supposed to end at 1:30, but Christopher, if you have a little time to stay on.
I have all the time in the afternoon to do whatever it is you would like me to do. I'll answer questions all afternoon.
All right, so why don't we open it up to questions, and you can either unmute yourself or maybe Sarah or Lisa could pull some from the chat.
Christopher, the first one that I'm seeing that I think you covered a little bit, but there's a question about high tunnels versus greenhouses, and can you fund a greenhouse? And I know you covered this briefly, but if you can answer that one.
No, we cannot cover a greenhouse because a greenhouse is usually covered in glass, and we do not, that is not part of our standards and specs. It has to be temporary plastic covering. So no, we do not cover those.
Okay, and another one that I saw was, and it might not be for you, Christopher, this could be for maybe one of the other farmers that have high tunnels, is what are some ways that you can grow in the winter time using mulches and row covers? What mulches and row covers would you use?
I'm going to leave that to somebody who has experience growing in a high tunnel, because that was another question or another comment that was made. As far as the agency staff goes, there are a number of folks who have jumped on the high tunnel, a number of staff who have jumped on board with buying their own or working through their own process through Eqip to get their own high tunnels to gain the experience. But you're looking at a lot of folks who may not have hands-on experience with high tunnels. They've gone to the trainings, they know the ins and outs of high tunnels, but they really don't know the ins and outs of what happens and how things grow. I would direct this one probably to Melissa. She has more experience with it than I do.
Sure. Yeah, you can. I guess what I've mostly done is I've used number 9 gauge wire and cut it in maybe 4 or 5 foot lengths and just made little hoops over a bed inside the hoop house, and then put frost blanket, or I don't know what you call it. You know, it's kind of like light can go through it, but it keeps heat in. You can also do that with plastic. You can just make a little plastic high tunnel or mini tunnel inside your high tunnel for when it gets really cool, you know, cool outside. Some people grow spinach, like in southern Wisconsin, all through the winter. I think Snug Haven Farm has like 8 high tunnels, and they grow spinach in 5 of them every year, and they grow spinach throughout the winter. And spinach, and there might be some other greens, but things like spinach, like it can freeze completely and then thaw during the day and still be totally edible. It's like magic. It's like got something inside its cells that makes them not break even when they freeze. Yeah, this is a great picture. This is exactly the kind of thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah, this is spinach in the middle of the winter in my tunnel using those metal hoops that Melissa was just sharing about, and that frost blanket.
Yep.
My daughter went missing one morning and I couldn't find her. She was sneaking spinach in the high tunnel in December.
Yeah.
Chris, there's a bunch in the chat asking, besides hoop houses, what else does NRCS fund?
Oh, geez.
Right?
We could have a whole nother.
Rotational grazing is a big one, I feel like.
Yeah, prescribed grazing. We do individual practices, and I'm going to just kind of go over with some of them that you might look at. Cover crops would be one. Irrigation might be another. Irrigation water management's one. Nutrient and pest management are another. We also deal with organic. There's a lot of different things that we do. Basically, if you have an idea of what you would like to do, I would have a discussion with an NRCS staff member and see if there are any cost assistance programs that could provide the assistance getting things set up. Prescribed grazing. I really like small grazing projects that we have. Again, I work right around the cities. I work in Anoka, Hennepin, and Sherburne. And we've done a number of small grazing for, small head of cattle, goats. We don't really have much in place for chickens. So that's something we don't work with. We don't do chicken tractors or anything like that. That is not part of our program, at least not at this point. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. Kind of go through what you would like to do, and then kind of go and talk to an NRCS staff member. If you got questions, you can always send me an email. Like I said, I'll put it in the chat here if I can figure out how to do it. And you can always send me an email and I'll get a response back to you. Might take me a little bit of time, but I'll get a response back to you. And we can kind of work our way through it. Let's see. Where did you end off on the questions? Because I can run through them just as we go
That'd be
here.
great.
Well, and I'm just going to jump
see.
in here that someone mentioned that they had not had a great experience with their local NRCS person. And Melissa noted that you can also reach out to other NRCS offices. And I think that I've seen this happen too. And sometimes it's a personality thing. Sometimes it's an office that is way understaffed. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, don't give up if you have one, if you have one experience that isn't the greatest. It's not indicative of the whole agency. It often is, a specific thing, and do reach out to other folks. And again, that's what the connectors, and certainly feel free to reach out to Renewing the Countryside or Sustainable Farming Association. We're all trying to work together to make this work.
I can say for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that probably a good reason, or a reason for it, I won't say it's a good reason, but a reason for it is probably a communication issue and an understanding issue on both sides. So one of the things that you should do, and I highly recommend, is pulling in somebody who has had experience, like your conservation connectors, and have them join you. Because, and I don't know, I haven't seen the one where they said they had an issue with an NRCS individual, but if you have those issues, bring in your conservation connectors, bring in people that you can have help you navigate it, because more than likely it's an understanding or communication problem that that folks are not on the same page. And really that's the reason why we like to do things, and we like to communicate face-to-face, one-on-one, in person, because there is so many little minute details that we can work through and assist you with and show you in the field. I mean, there's a lot of us that we like to go and probe, we'll take a soil probe out there and show you your soils and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's some of us that will really get down into the dirt, and, we kind of like that. It kind of stinks being in the office all the time. So if you have those issues, yeah, bring a connector with you, talk with staff. Yeah, we all would like to provide the best assistance. That is, I don't know if anybody knows Troy Daniels, but Troy Daniels is a state con, and that is one of his requirements, is high quality customer service. Let's see. Where do we have other questions? I have to jump. Let's see.
Flower farmers, can they get a high tunnel, or is this just for food?
Yes. Nope. You can do vegetables and flowers. That's why they say high. I can't remember what I put in there. High value crops. It's really, what are you planning on growing?
A question about, if you're unsure about what Eqip program will work for your land, does that get determined during the site visit, before or after? And I can answer that one, Kendra. As a farmer that's used in NRCS programs, invite them out to your land. What they're going to do, this is a voluntary program. What they're going to do is listen to your goals for your land. They want to know what
Correct.
you want to do, and they're also going to be looking at where there's resource concerns. Perhaps you have erosion, perhaps you have invasive species, perhaps you have whatever the resource concern is. They're going to look at that and they're going to be able to walk you through it, but they're going to listen to your dreams and goals for your land as well. And so they're going to give you what's called a conservation plan. And the conservation plan is like I don't know, it's like a to-do list. If I had to say it, I would say that it's a to-do list for your farm to be using, and you get to decide which one you would like to put the focus on and which one you want to apply that grant, that cost share application for. You don't always get funded. Am I saying everything right here, Chris, so far?
You were absolutely 100% correct. It is kind of a plan for you as you move through the future. Usually a conservation plan is a fluid document that changes as your goals change. Your goals can change from financial issues, weather issues, whatever, but it's gonna, it's a changing document, and then it basically kind of helps us prepare for funding cycles. Because we have a funding cycle that starts every year and then is redone every year. So we just kind of go through and we have a plan. So if there's additional dollars in something that we can put together an application for you, we're going to try to get her done. Let's see, what other questions do we have? I'm more than happy to answer questions. I got the next hour and a half. I got all the time I can take.
Well, I'm thinking we'll maybe go for 5 more minutes and then you can follow up. So one question.
Well, I put my email in the chat. So if anybody has any questions that you don't get answered here, send me an email and I will respond to you. Again, it may take me a little bit of time, but I will get back to you.
I think one thing that I learned in my own process was that, it's not also just a one-time thing. Like you can apply, get funded or not get funded, get the contract or not get contract. But even if you do get a contract, once you get that work done, you can go back and say, okay, now I want to work again on that conservation plan. Now I want to turn my attention to X that needs work on my farm in terms of conservation.
Correct. And yeah, we can, that's the whole idea of the plan, is to kind of prioritize what you want to do. Sorry, if I look over this direction, everybody's over here on this screen. I'm up on this screen, which I avoid at the max, and my PowerPoint's here. So don't think I'm leaving you when I go over. I've got a question here from Heather. I live on 40 acres, cut down 8 to 10 pine trees, for example, to make it fit. I'm talking when you cutting down like timber to make a whole bunch of them fit. So if you're just removing a couple of trees here and there to make a spot for your hoop house, then that's fine. And if you're cropping that area, that should make it fit. You would want to talk to I don't know where you mentioned the North Woods.
She's up in Embarrass.
In Barrett. Wow, that's way up there.
Yeah,
It is.
way up there. I encourage her to have
Congratulations.
NRCS come out.
Yeah, you please have NRCS come out and visit your site, but I don't see where there would be an issue. There was somebody in here that asked about they had done an application but didn't get funded for the second. Usually the agency, due to the limited funding, we have kind of limited to one high tunnel per location, if that makes sense, per producer kind of deal. It's kind of something that we want people to have the opportunity to do high tunnels, and some people score higher than the rest, and it's just not fair to everybody else if we just keep giving the same high tunnels to the same people. So we really try to utilize a ranking and scoring system that takes that into account. Let's see, for your comments about timeframes and responding, Chris, it sounds like NRCS needs to hire additional staff. Marita, you are absolutely correct. And you can take that up to anybody who you'd like to have conversations with and make sure that the government funds us to the max and provides us all the cost assistance we ask for. And I guarantee you everybody will be funded for high tunnels.
Can I
So Christopher,
follow up on that? So is your money coming from the farm bill?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to be advocating then for adequate funding for essentially local food systems, regional food systems, right?
Yes.
Because this is a key,
Correct. Or
key part of it.
correct. Or Eqip programs, or the other thing that you can do is, I'm not advocating you go to your people, but I'm just saying another opportunity that you have is as a group of like you're all like focused with the sustainable farming, ag, and RTC, you're all kind of the same focus. It's not unheard of to reach out for like a RCPP application. I know you're going to be like, what is an RCPP? And I can't remember what RCPP stands for. Regional Conservation
Partnership Program.
There you go, partnership program. We get so tied up with that acronym soup that we forget what they all mean. But you guys are so like-minded in what you're talking about, that Marita, that's an opportunity for everybody to go, hey, we could get focused funding on urban ag and get allocated dollars just to focus on prescribed grazing type, urban ag, high tunnel type stuff, small acre cover crops. Those are opportunities that I think are being missed widely around the urban because you guys aren't aware of kind of the programs. But for RCT and SFA, you guys should literally get on the same page together and sit down and look at the RCPP application opportunities and put in an application, because you can set aside millions of dollars, and you can see we have a limit of $10,000 for high tunnels. $1 million times 10,000 or divided by 10,000, that's a lot of high tunnels.
We will take that advice, and I know there's a grant cycle right now that the grants are due sometime in April, but we were actually thinking about that. So Chris, your encouragement is helpful in thinking, yeah, we maybe should really do that. You know, I think one question I have, and then we'll let one more person do a question, is that I am seeing some notes in here about, deer fencing, and mentioning that the DNR can provide some funds on that. And if you can talk a little bit about the fact, because I know that there are, there's NRCS, but then there's the DNR, and there's the Department of Natural Resources, and then there's a soil water conservation districts. And I know you all kind of work together sometimes and do different things. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
A little bit about different agencies. I'm not familiar with a lot of the different agencies. I don't want to speak out of turn for some of the different agencies, but what I can tell you is that if you're working and you are in contact with an NRCS individual, and they're usually a district conservationist or what they call a soil conservationist, or it could be a soil con, but if you're working with somebody like that, and you do your initial site visit and you're like, well, we want to do this and we're going to do that, that staff person will or could connect you with partners that they are familiar with that can help you, provide you with that extra assistance to meet your goals. Because really our whole goal is to help you meet your goal, and that you can go away and come to a place like this where I think we had 80 or 100 people on, and you can share your story and say, oh my gosh, this was such an awesome thing, and this is what you all want to do because this is where it's at. That's what we want to have happen. So that's kind of our goal. So we want to have a good experience for everybody. And for those folks who haven't, I apologize highly, but I would revisit those things, and I'd be like getting your conservation connector with you. And if you Zoom it or you Teams it or you face-to-face it, it really doesn't matter. But get on the same page and see what happened, because more than likely it's a miscommunication somewhere and can be easily fixed 90% of the time.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
sorry, I don't want to really get deep into other people's stuff because
No,
state cost share has money.
yeah. I think that's just the point that I wanted to kind of raise up, is that there are other entities too that are kind of, I don't know, sister organizations to, or connected in this sphere of conservation minded, whether they're agencies. And that was my experience, was that the local NRCS person that I worked with said, oh, well, we don't do that, but you should talk to the Department of Natural Resources because they do that.
Right.
And so those
Or the soil and water conservation districts.
And
Yeah.
I think it's also good to know that the NRCS person may not know all of them, and that that's a good chance to talk to the conservation connectors or to other farmers about how they've done other things. Okay, so one more question, and then we're gonna close this great conversation for the day. Anyone? Okay, go ahead.
I'm just curious if the Regional Conservation Partnership Program is also a competitive program.
It is.
Okay.
It is open across the country. The thing that you want to look at, and if it's something that you want to jump into or you want to provide a little bit more input on as you develop it and grow it, basically, the more partners you have and the more in-kind you offer, the better you score. And there are people in the state office that NRCS that will help you develop these applications. And again, if you're interested, either Renewing the Countryside or Sustainable Farming Association, if you guys are interested in this, I can give you the connection for the people who to talk to help you develop this RCPP. I mean, it really can provide highly focused dollars on highly focused practices that can provide great assistance for everybody on this call. I mean, really it could. And I'd be more than happy to support whatever it is that you need as far as questions.
Does the funding from the federal government through these newer dollars that are supposed to be available for local food systems, is that covered? Is this RCPP covered in that?
I am unfamiliar with that because, and the reason why I'm unfamiliar with that is because very simply, I can't write it. So I don't really dig into it until somebody asks me a question.
Okay.
And so I have to go and look to find out and then respond back with an answer. But right now I couldn't tell you because I can't write it. So I can't write it and I don't review it. So I haven't had a chance to really look into it deep. So
thank you. I understand. Understand. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And to those of you who were speakers, we really appreciate your time and your contribution. We will be following up with an email just with links to this and to links to some of the resources and contact information for folks. And we'll read through all of those chat questions too to kind of pull that knowledge together too. So with that, I hope you all have a great day. And if you would want more of this, tomorrow there's a session that's focused on Wisconsin, but there will be good learnings from that from the Wisconsin folks too. Lisa Kiveris, do you have any other last words before we sign off?
No, I'm just going to throw the Wisconsin link in the chat. Please share.